I never thought 3 words could change everything between us, but when Jake said, "I want to feel something," while looking directly into my eyes, I knew our friendship had crossed a line we could never uncross. The way his voice cracked on the word "something" told me he wasn't talking about just any feeling, and the way his gaze held mine told me he already knew exactly what he wanted to feel. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. It started on a Thursday night in October, the kind of evening where the air carries just enough chill to make you want to stay inside with someone you care about. Jake had been my best friend since sophomore year of college, and now, 3 years after graduation, we still maintained our weekly tradition of hanging out at my apartment, usually playing video games or watching whatever was trending on Netflix. But that night felt different from the moment he walked through my door. Jake Matthews was the kind of guy who turned heads without trying. 6'2" with sandy brown hair that always looked perfectly messy, green eyes that seemed to see right through people, and a smile that could convince anyone to do just about anything. He played baseball in college, and even though he worked in marketing now, he still had that athletic build that made clothes look like they were tailored specifically for him. But more than his looks, Jake had this energy about him, this magnetic presence that drew people in. He was confident without being arrogant, funny without being cruel, and loyal to a fault. I had been in love with him for 2 years. Not that I had ever told him, of course. Jake was straight, had always been straight, dated a string of beautiful women throughout college and beyond. His last relationship had ended 6 months ago with Emma, a blonde marketing executive who looked like she stepped out of a magazine. They had dated for almost a year, and when it ended, Jake had been devastated. He spent weeks on my couch, eating takeout and analyzing every detail of their relationship, trying to figure out where it went wrong. That was when I first started noticing the way my heart would race when he would lean against me during those late-night conversations, or how my breath would catch when he would absently run his fingers through his hair while talking. I told myself it was just proximity, just the intimacy of being someone's emotional support during a difficult time. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The realization that I was gay had come gradually, then all at once. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, I had dated girls because that was what you did. I had convinced myself that the lack of spark I felt was normal, that relationships were supposed to be more about companionship than passion. It wasn't until I met Jake that I understood what attraction really felt like. The way my pulse would quicken when he laughed at something I said, the way I found myself memorizing the details of his face when he wasn't looking, the way I would lie awake at night thinking about what it would feel like to kiss him. Coming to terms with my sexuality had been terrifying and liberating at the same time. I had come out to my sister first, then gradually to a few close friends, but never to Jake. The risk felt too great. What if it changed things between us? What if he felt uncomfortable around me? What if I lost the most important person in my life? So I kept my feelings locked away, content to be his best friend, to be the person he called when he needed to talk, to be the one constant in his life. It was enough, I told myself. It had to be enough. But that Thursday night, something was different about Jake from the moment he arrived. He seemed restless, distracted, like he was carrying the weight of something he couldn't quite articulate. We ordered pizza and started a movie, but I could tell he wasn't really watching. He kept shifting on the couch, running his hands through his hair, stealing glances at me when he thought I wasn't looking. "You okay?" I finally asked during a particularly quiet moment in the film. Jake paused the movie and turned to face me. In the dim light from the television, his features looked sharper, more defined. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." He was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him struggling with whatever was on his mind. "How did you know?" "Know what?" "That you were gay." The question hit me like a physical blow. We had never talked about my sexuality directly. I had mentioned dating men casually in conversation over the past year, and Jake had never seemed surprised or uncomfortable with it. But we had never had an explicit conversation about it. I started, then stopped, trying to figure out how to answer. I guess I always knew on some level, but it took me a long time to admit it to myself. Jake nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on his hands. What was it like? The realization, I mean. I studied his face, trying to read his expression. Scary, I said honestly, but also like everything suddenly made sense. Like I had been trying to force puzzle pieces together that were never meant to fit, and suddenly I found the right picture. Did it change how you felt about your friendships? With guys, I mean. My heart started beating faster. What do you mean? I don't know. Jake looked up at me, and there was something vulnerable in his eyes that I had never seen before. I've been thinking a lot lately about friendship and attraction and the difference between them, or if there even is a difference sometimes. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that whatever I said next could change everything between us. I think the lines can be blurrier than people want to admit, I said carefully. Jake was quiet for a long time, his gaze moving between my face and his hands. The movie played forgotten in the background, casting shifting shadows across the room. Finally, he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. I think I might be attracted to you. The words hung in the air between us like a live wire. I felt my breath catch, my heart hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. Jake. I know, he said quickly. I know this is crazy. I know I'm supposed to be straight. I've been with women my whole life. But lately, I can't stop thinking about you. About us. About what it would be like to. He trailed off, shaking his head. God, I'm losing my mind. You're not losing your mind, I said softly. He looked at me with such intensity that I felt exposed, like he could see every secret I had been keeping. I keep thinking about that night last month when we fell asleep watching that terrible horror movie. I woke up and you were curled up against me, and instead of moving away, I wanted to stay like that forever. And then I started thinking about other moments, like when you laugh at something I say and your whole face lights up, or when you're concentrating on something and you get that little crease between your eyebrows. I started realizing that the way I think about you isn't the way I think about my other friends. I was afraid to speak, afraid to move, afraid that if I did anything at all, this moment would shatter and we would go back to pretending that everything was normal between us. I've never felt this way about a guy before, Jake continued. I don't know what it means. I don't know if I'm gay or bi or just confused. All I know is that when I'm with you, I feel more like myself than I do with anyone else. And lately, that feeling has been turning into something else. Something I don't know how to handle. What kind of something? I asked, my voice barely audible. Jake moved closer to me on the couch, close enough that I could smell his cologne, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. The kind of something that makes me want to kiss you, he said. The kind of something that makes me think about what your hands would feel like on my skin. The kind of something that scares the hell out of me because I never thought I was capable of feeling it. I felt like I was drowning and flying at the same time. Every fantasy I had ever had about this moment paled in comparison to the reality of Jake looking at me like I was something precious and terrifying all at once. I'm scared too, I admitted. I've been in love with you for 2 years, and I never thought you could feel the same way. Jake's eyes widened. 2 years. 2 years, I confirmed. Since that night you came over after your fight with Emma about moving in together. You were so upset, and you fell asleep with your head on my shoulder, and I realized that I would do anything to make you happy. That's when I knew. Why didn't you say anything? Because you're my best friend, I said. Because I was terrified of losing you. Because I thought you were straight, and I didn't want to make things weird between us. Jake reached out and touched my face, his thumb tracing along my cheekbone. Things are already weird between us, he said with a small smile. They've been weird for months. I just didn't know why until now. The touch of his hand on my face sent electricity through my entire body. I had imagined this moment so many times, but nothing had prepared me for the reality of it. Jake's skin was warm against mine, his touch gentle but sure, and when I looked into his eyes, I saw the same mixture of fear and desire that I felt. I don't know how to do this, Jake said softly. I don't know how to be with a guy. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I said. I mean, I know how to be with a guy in general, but I don't know how to be with you. I don't know how to go from being your best friend to being, whatever this is. Maybe we don't have to figure it all out right now, Jake said. Maybe we can just start with this moment and see what happens. He leaned closer, and I could feel his breath on my lips. Can I kiss you? He asked. Instead of answering with words, I closed the distance between us. The first touch of his lips against mine was soft, tentative, like he was afraid I might disappear if he moved too fast. But when I kissed him back, when I let him know that this was what I wanted too, he deepened the kiss, his hand moving to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. Kissing Jake was everything I had imagined and nothing like I had expected all at once. His lips were softer than I had thought they would be, and he tasted like the beer he had been drinking and something that was uniquely him. But more than the physical sensation was the emotional weight of it, the knowledge that this was Jake, my Jake, finally kissing me the way I had dreamed about for so long. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Jake rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. Wow, he said. Yeah, I agreed. Wow. We sat like that for a moment, just breathing each other in, before Jake pulled back to look at me. I can't believe we just did that. Are you okay? I asked, suddenly worried that he might be having second thoughts. I'm more than okay, he said. I don't know what I am. Confused, maybe, but also relieved. Like I've been holding my breath for months and I can finally breathe again. I understood exactly what he meant. The tension that had been building between us, the unspoken feelings that had been simmering under the surface of our friendship, had finally been acknowledged. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest. So what happens now? I asked. Jake was quiet for a moment, his hand still resting on my neck. I don't know, he said honestly. I've never been in this situation before. I don't know the rules. There are no rules, I said. We make this up as we go along. I'm going to need time, Jake said, to figure out what this means, to understand what I'm feeling. I know, I said. I'm not going anywhere. Jake smiled, the first real smile I had seen from him all evening. Promise. Promise. We spent the rest of the night talking, really talking, in a way we never had before. Jake told me about the confusion he had been feeling, about the way his attraction to women had been shifting over the past few months, about how he had started noticing men in ways he never had before. He told me about the night he had realized he was attracted to me specifically, about how terrifying and exhilarating that realization had been. I told him about my own journey of self-discovery, about the fear and shame I had felt when I first acknowledged my sexuality, about the loneliness of being in love with someone I thought I could never have. I told him about all the moments over the past 2 years when I had wanted to tell him how I felt, about all the times I had talked myself out of it. We talked until the sun started coming up, curled up together on my couch, Jake's arm around me, my head on his chest. It felt natural, like we had been doing it for years instead of for the first time. I should probably go home, Jake said when we noticed the light creeping through the windows. You could stay, I offered, then quickly added, you could sleep in the guest room. Or on the couch. I don't want you to think I'm assuming anything. Jake laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. I know what you meant, but I think I need some time to process all of this. Is that okay? Of course, I said, even though part of me wanted to hold on to this moment forever, afraid that if he left, he might change his mind about everything that had happened between us. Jake seemed to sense my hesitation because he tilted my chin up to look at him. This isn't me running away, he said. This is me being careful with something that matters to me. With someone who matters to me. Okay, I said, and I meant it. Jake kissed me again before he left, softer this time, more sure of himself. I'll call you later, he said. I'll be here. After he left, I sat on my couch for a long time, replaying every moment of the night before. Part of me couldn't believe it had actually happened. Jake had kissed me. He had told me he was attracted to me. He had opened up about his confusion and his feelings in a way that felt raw and honest and real. But another part of me was terrified. What if he woke up and decided it had all been a mistake? What if the reality of being attracted to a man was too much for him to handle? What if he decided that preserving our friendship meant pretending that none of it had ever happened? I tried to push those thoughts away, to focus on the positive, but they lingered in the back of my mind like a constant whisper of doubt. Jake did call, later that afternoon, but the conversation was awkward in a way that our conversations never were. He seemed distant, distracted, and when I asked him how he was feeling about everything, he said he was still processing and needed a little more time. We didn't see each other for a week. It was the longest we had gone without hanging out since we became friends, and every day that passed without hearing from him felt like confirmation of my worst fears. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, taking on extra projects, anything to keep my mind occupied. But at night, alone in my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about that kiss, about the way Jake had looked at me, about the possibility that I might have lost my best friend in the process of gaining something I had wanted for so long. When Jake finally texted me the following Thursday, asking if he could come over, I felt a mixture of relief and terror. I spent the entire day anxious, cleaning my apartment obsessively, changing clothes 3 times, trying to prepare myself for whatever conversation we were about to have. When Jake arrived, he looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled, like he had been running his hands through it. He gave me a small smile when I opened the door, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I replied, stepping aside to let him in. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the distance between us feeling like a chasm. The easy intimacy we had shared the week before was gone, replaced by an awkwardness that made my chest tight. "I've been thinking," Jake said finally. "Yeah? About what happened? About what I said?" I braced myself for the rejection I was sure was coming. "I think I might have been confused," Jake continued, not meeting my eyes. "I was in a weird headspace, you know? Still getting over Emma, feeling lonely. I think maybe I was projecting feelings onto our friendship that weren't really there." Each word felt like a physical blow. "Okay," I managed to say. "I mean, you're my best friend," Jake said, finally looking at me. "You're the most important person in my life. I think maybe I was confusing that emotional intimacy with something else." "Right," I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. "I don't want to lose what we have," Jake said. "Our friendship means everything to me. I think maybe we should just pretend that night never happened and go back to the way things were." I stared at him for a long moment, seeing the fear in his eyes, the way he was holding himself rigid like he was preparing for a fight. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't about confusion or projection or any of the other explanations he was giving me. This was about fear. Jake was scared of what it meant to be attracted to a man, scared of what it might say about his identity, scared of how his life might change if he acknowledged these feelings. "Is that what you really want?" I asked quietly. "I think it's what's best," Jake said, but his voice lacked conviction. "That's not what I asked." Jake was quiet for a long time, his hands clenched in his lap. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said. "I can't stop thinking about that kiss. I can't stop wondering what it would be like to be with you. And it's driving me crazy because I don't know what any of it means." "It doesn't have to mean anything more than what it is," I said. "It doesn't have to change who you are or how you see yourself. It can just be about us, about this connection we have." "But what if it does change everything?" Jake asked, looking at me with such vulnerability that it took my breath away. "What if I'm not who I thought I was? What if everything I believed about myself was wrong?" I moved closer to him on the couch, close enough to take his hands in mine. "Then you figure it out," I said. "And I'll be here while you do." "What if I hurt you?" Jake asked. "What if I can't give you what you need? What if I'm too scared or too confused or too fucked up to be what you deserve?" "Then we deal with that too," I said. "But Jake, you can't make decisions based on fear. You can't run away from something that might be amazing because you're scared it might also be difficult." Jake looked down at our joined hands, his thumb tracing over my knuckles. "I've never been so scared of anything in my life," he said. "I know," I said. "But you don't have to be scared alone." Jake was quiet for a long time, and I could practically see the internal battle playing out across his features. Finally, he looked up at me, and I saw something shift in his expression, a kind of resolution settling over him. "I want to try," he said. "I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm probably going to freak out a dozen more times before I figure this out, but I want to try. With you." The relief that flooded through me was so intense it was almost overwhelming. "Are you sure?" "No," Jake said with a small laugh. "I'm not sure about anything right now, but I'm sure about how I feel when I'm with you. I'm sure that I've never felt as connected to anyone as I feel connected to you. And I'm sure that I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I had been brave enough to find out." I leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet, a promise and a beginning all at once. When we broke apart, Jake smiled, and this time it did reach his eyes. "So what now?" he asked. "Now we take it slow," I said. "We figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations. Just us." "I like the sound of that," Jake said. We spent that evening like we had spent so many others, watching movies and talking, but everything felt different now. There was an electricity in the air, a sense of possibility that hadn't been there before. Jake sat closer to me than he usually did, and when he reached for my hand during a particularly intense scene in the movie, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Can I stay tonight?" Jake asked when the movie ended. "I mean, actually stay. With you." Are you sure you're ready for that? I asked. I don't know if I'm ready for anything, Jake said, but I know I don't want to leave. We went to my bedroom together, and there was something both thrilling and terrifying about it. This was uncharted territory for both of us in different ways. For Jake, it was his first time being intimate with a man. For me, it was my first time being intimate with someone I was in love with. We undressed slowly, carefully, taking time to explore this new dynamic between us. Jake's body was even more beautiful than I had imagined, all lean muscle and golden skin, and the way he looked at me, like I was something precious and desired, made me feel more confident than I ever had before. I don't know what I'm doing, Jake said as we lay down together. We'll figure it out, I said, kissing him softly. There's no rush. What followed was tender and exploratory, a careful dance of discovery and desire. Jake was tentative at first, unsure of himself, but as the night progressed, he became more confident, more sure of what he wanted. And what he wanted, it turned out, was me. Afterward, we lay tangled together in my bed, Jake's head on my chest, my fingers running through his hair. The room was quiet except for the sound of our breathing, and I felt more content than I had in years. That was. Jake started, then trailed off. Yeah, I agreed, understanding what he couldn't quite put into words. I never knew it could feel like that, Jake said. I mean, I've been with women, and it was good, but this was different, more intense, more connected. It's different when it's with someone you have real feelings for, I said. Jake lifted his head to look at me. Is that what this is? Real feelings. For me it is, I said. I love you, Jake. I have for a long time. Jake was quiet for a moment, and I could see him processing my words. I think I love you too, he said finally. I don't know if I'm ready to say it out loud yet, but I think that's what this feeling is. You don't have to say anything you're not ready to say, I told him. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Jake asked, echoing the question he had asked me the week before. Promise, I said, kissing the top of his head. The next few weeks were a period of adjustment for both of us. Jake was still figuring out what it meant to be in a relationship with a man, still coming to terms with this new aspect of his sexuality. Some days he was confident and sure of himself, reaching for my hand in public or kissing me goodbye without hesitation. Other days he was more uncertain, pulling back when we encountered people we knew, struggling with internalized fears and expectations. I tried to be patient, to give him the space he needed to work through his feelings without pressuring him to move faster than he was comfortable with. But it wasn't always easy. There were moments when his uncertainty felt like rejection, when his hesitation to be open about our relationship felt like shame about being with me. We had our first real fight 3 weeks after we started dating. We were at a bar with some mutual friends, and when one of them asked Jake if he was seeing anyone, he said no. The lie hit me like a slap in the face, and I spent the rest of the evening barely speaking to him. What's wrong with you? Jake asked when we got back to my apartment. You told them you weren't seeing anyone, I said. So we've been together for 3 weeks. We spend every night together. We're sleeping together. What would you call that? Jake ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I had come to recognize as a sign that he was feeling overwhelmed. It's complicated, he said. It's only complicated because you're making it complicated, I said, my frustration finally boiling over. Either you want to be with me or you don't. Either this relationship matters to you or it doesn't. Of course it matters to me, Jake said. You matter to me. But I'm not ready to have conversations with people about my sexuality. I'm not ready to answer questions about what this means or what I am. I'm not asking you to give a speech about your sexual identity, I said. I'm asking you to acknowledge that we're together. I'm asking you not to pretend I don't exist when people ask about your dating life. That's not what I was doing, Jake said, but we both knew it wasn't true. Then what were you doing? Jake was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. I was being a coward, he said finally. I was taking the easy way out because I was scared of how they might react. I get that you're scared, I said, my anger softening into something more like sadness. I understand that this is all new for you. But I can't be your dirty little secret, Jake. I can't be something you're ashamed of. I'm not ashamed of you, Jake said quickly. I could never be ashamed of you. Then what is it? Jake looked at me with such pain in his eyes that it took my breath away. I'm ashamed of myself, he said. I'm ashamed that I'm 26 years old and I'm just figuring out who I am. I'm ashamed that I don't have answers to the questions people are going to ask. I'm ashamed that I'm so scared of what other people think. The fight went out of me all at once. I moved closer to Jake, taking his hands in mine. You don't have anything to be ashamed of, I said. There's no timeline for self-discovery. There's no right or wrong way to figure out who you are. I feel like I should have known, Jake said. I feel like there should have been signs, like I should have realized I was attracted to men before now. Maybe there were signs and you just weren't ready to see them, I said. Or maybe there weren't, and that's okay too. Sexuality can be fluid. It can change and evolve throughout your life. I just don't want people to think I'm going through a phase, Jake said. I don't want them to think this isn't real. The only people whose opinions matter are yours and mine, I said. And I know this is real. I can see it in the way you look at me, in the way you touch me, in the way you make me feel like I'm the most important person in your world. Jake squeezed my hands. You are the most important person in my world. Then that's all that matters, I said. We made up that night, and Jake made an effort to be more open about our relationship going forward. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments when his fear got the better of him, but he was trying, and that meant everything to me. The real turning point came about 2 months into our relationship. Jake had been invited to his college roommate's wedding, and he asked me to be his date. It was the first time he had asked me to accompany him to a social event where people from his past would be present, people who had known him when he was exclusively dating women. Are you sure about this? I asked when he brought it up. I'm sure, Jake said. I want you there with me. I want people to meet the person who makes me happy. The wedding was beautiful, held at a vineyard in Napa Valley, and Jake looked incredible in his navy suit. I felt nervous as we walked into the reception, knowing that we would be meeting people who had known Jake for years, people who might be surprised to see him with a man. But Jake was amazing. He introduced me as his boyfriend without hesitation, his hand resting on the small of my back, his pride in our relationship evident to anyone who was paying attention. When people asked questions, he answered them honestly, but without going into more detail than he was comfortable sharing. This is my boyfriend, Alex, he would say, and the way he said the word boyfriend, with such warmth and certainty, made my heart soar every time. We danced together at the reception, slow and close, and I could feel the eyes of other guests on us, but Jake didn't seem to care. He was focused entirely on me, his forehead resting against mine as we swayed to the music. I love you, he said suddenly, the words coming out in a rush like he had been holding them back for too long. I felt my breath catch. What? I love you, Jake repeated, more confidently this time. I'm in love with you. I have been for weeks, maybe months. I was just too scared to say it. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I love you too, I said. So much. Jake kissed me right there on the dance floor, in front of all those people, and I felt like my heart might burst from happiness. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when Jake stopped being afraid and started being brave. The months that followed were some of the happiest of my life. Jake and I settled into a rhythm that felt natural and right, spending most nights together, meeting each other's friends and families, building a life together that felt solid and real. Jake's family was incredibly welcoming when he introduced me as his boyfriend. His parents, who I had met several times over the years as his friend, treated me exactly the same as they always had, with warmth and affection. His younger sister Emma, who had always been close to Jake, pulled me aside at a family barbecue to tell me how happy she was that her brother had found someone who made him smile the way I did. I've never seen him like this, she said. He's always been confident, but with you, he's also content. Like he's finally comfortable in his own skin. My own family adored Jake, which wasn't surprising since he was charming and funny and clearly devoted to me. My mother, who had been worried about me being single for so long, was thrilled to see me in a happy relationship. My father, who had initially been a bit awkward when I came out to him, seemed to relax around Jake in a way that told me he approved of my choice in partners. But it wasn't just about family acceptance. Jake and I were building something together that felt bigger than either of us individually. We complemented each other in ways that surprised me. Where I was cautious, he was bold. Where he was impulsive, I was thoughtful. We challenged each other to be better while also providing a safe space for each other to be vulnerable. Jake threw himself into learning about gay culture and history with the same intensity he brought to everything else in his life. He read books, watched documentaries, asked me endless questions about my experiences growing up gay. He wanted to understand not just his own sexuality, but the broader context of the LGBTQ+ community he was now a part of. I feel like I have so much catching up to do, he said one evening as we lay in bed together. Like there's this whole part of myself I never knew existed, and now I want to understand everything about it. You don't have to learn everything at once, I told him. This is a journey, not a destination. I know, Jake said, but I want to be worthy of this. Of us. I want to be the kind of partner you deserve. You already are, I said, kissing him softly. You're exactly the partner I deserve because you're exactly who you are. Jake had also started seeing a therapist to help him work through some of the internalized homophobia and fear he was still carrying. It was his idea, and I was proud of him for taking that step. He would come home from sessions sometimes feeling emotionally drained, but also lighter, like he was shedding layers of shame and self-doubt that had been weighing him down. She asked me today what I was most afraid of. Jake told me after one particularly intense session. What did you tell her? That I was afraid of not being enough, Jake said. Afraid that I was too late to this realization, too old to be figuring out my sexuality, too inexperienced to be a good partner to you. And what did she say? She said that love doesn't have an expiration date, Jake said with a small smile. She said that the fact that I'm willing to do this work, to examine my fears and challenge my assumptions, shows that I'm exactly the kind of partner someone would want to build a life with. She's right, I said. I'm starting to believe that, Jake said. For the first time in my life, I'm starting to believe that I'm worthy of the kind of love I feel for you. Our relationship wasn't without its challenges. Jake still had moments of doubt, times when the magnitude of the changes